What's up, everyone? Welcome to another Fuse Meet session. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And don't worry, I won't say that again, but I might sneak it in at the end, perhaps. So, what's been going on at Fuse? We had a massive week last week. It's been really sort of all hands on deck. We went through a huge rebrand and also new positioning via our white paper. So if nobody's checked that out yet, go and have a look on the website. Everything's up there to have a look. There's a big banner at the top. You can get straight into the new white paper and have a dig around, and we would enjoy all feedback that comes in. So yeah, busy week. And now into this week. So this week I've got Irene Wu, and she is the head of integrations and business development over at LayerZero. So how are you doing today, Irene? Are you well?
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm doing great.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So we're here today to talk about LayerZero platform, which wants to kind of make it, well, not kind of, wants to make it easy for Web3 applications to communicate and work across multiple blockchains smoothly. One of their innovations that caught my eye last year was cross-chain staking, which has kind of changed how staking and claiming rewards work. So it's quite an innovative platform, and we've got some interesting things to talk about today. But in mid-January 23, so just a month ago, LayerZero deployed its cross-chain messaging protocol to Fuse network. So what does that mean? It means that projects and developers on Fuse can now use the LayerZero protocol to enrich their applications with cross-chain functionalities built on top of it. So we're here today to dive deeper into LayerZero, show developers how to leverage LayerZero when building on Fuse, and what kind of features are available. But before we jump into all that kind of deeper stuff, Irene, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you end up in Web3? And if possible, tell us a bit about what excites you about working with LayerZero.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking, for having me here today. My journey is a super eclectic one, and I think a lot of people in Web3 have also come from diverse and unexpected backgrounds. I spent the first half of my life training quite seriously as an athlete and was a self-taught engineer. That led me to studying computer science in school and continuing training for my sport, only to actually drop out very early during undergrad to pursue a venture in New York. It was a consumer-facing startup, and I spent about 3 years working on that as an operator. Throughout that time, I came across the white paper via some experiences with friends and needing Bitcoin to transact on their behalf, and was fascinated by the technology. So from afar, I just started buying and trading. When I returned to university later on, there actually wasn't a full-fledged blockchain ecosystem or community, and so I played a really large role in creating that at my college. And long story short, after spending some time as an investor in early stage venture, mostly focusing on data infrastructure and developer tooling, I realized I wanted to go back to the ultimate team sport, which in my opinion is building a startup. Venture investing feels very much like an individual sport. And so I asked myself, if I was going to make one more bet as an investor in my career, in what space would that be? At this time, I guess it was a little bit more than a year ago now, I broadly knew that I would make that bet in blockchain infrastructure. That means so many different things, though, and there are many critical problems to solve. So then within that, one holy grail problem that excited me was the one of cross-chain interoperability. And it was through that research and diligence process that I eventually came across LayerZero.
Wow, that is a really cool story. I really liked your explanation of that ultimate team sport of startups. I've never heard that before. That is brilliant, Irene. Honestly, like that just fits so well. Brilliant. So you were actually so sorry. Let me just make sure I got this properly. You were you were attempting to be a professional athlete in a specific sport, and then kind of decided to drop away from that and focus on your other passion. Can I ask what sport that was?
Yeah, I was training as a coxswain for men's rowing.
Oh, wow. Wow. That is a
Are you
really
familiar at all with the sport?
a little bit. I wouldn't say massively, a little bit, just from being at university and stuff and hearing. But that is just super interesting to see that transition, like to go across there. But yeah, no, thank you for that. I always like to get a background on people just to kind of understand who I'm speaking to before we jump into these kind of protocol questions, you know, just to get an idea of where you've come from. So you're definitely not a newbie to the space. I think we can say that quite safely. All right, cool. Thank you. So let's jump into LayerZero. And what I want to do first is for people who perhaps have no idea what LayerZero is. What are you guys all about? What is LayerZero? What do you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to extend my answer to your previous question, this problem area that excited me, which I describe as cross-chain interoperability, is the problem of how do you enable communication between smart contracts on disparate chains, L1s, L2s, rollups, app chains, side chains, all of the above. And this moment that we're in right now in Web3 is not too dissimilar to the late 70s or early 80s and the formation of the internet, or the transition from intranet to internet. Way back when, there were these very isolated research institutions, think like Stanford, Harvard, MIT, and no meaningful way for these siloed institutions to send packets of information to each other, or to combine the forces of the information and work that they were each doing separately. And so the invention of TCP/IP, or the underlying internet protocol, was critical in scaling the internet, and is what enables us to all use web applications every single day and interact with people from everywhere around the world. When people hear blockchain or crypto, they often assume, if they're unfamiliar with the space, that it's just this one massive ecosystem and happy community. Solana, Ethereum, Polygon, Fuse, that these are all just cities in a country. But in actuality, these are like different planets. And so without underlying piping or a protocol like LayerZero, there's no way to, in a trust minimized way, guarantee knowledge of, let's say, $1 million spent on one chain to another. And so when I started researching the space, I looked into bridges, looked into different kinds of cross-chain messaging protocols, and LayerZero's architecture stuck out to me in particular. And so, what is it that LayerZero Labs has built? We've built LayerZero the protocol, and LayerZero the protocol is the leading omni-chain interoperability protocol. It's arbitrary contract invocation, at its core a generic messaging primitive, with the North Star aim of enabling communication between smart contracts on different chains.
Which is ultimately the goal that, as you said quite rightly at the beginning there, is what we're in that stage now in our space where this has become the paramount importance, that everybody seems to be building, and now it's like, oh, now we actually need to start, these things need to start communicating with one another. They've all been building in silos. So another good analogy there, I like that, with the sort of 70s and the internet structure and how those kind of things come together. Okay, thank you. So I mean, basically in a nutshell, LayerZero is making it possible for, shall we say, decentralized applications and protocols to actually call on the data that they need. So if we look at the three kind of core, from what I can see anyway, and Irene, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I see these sort of core concepts that guide the LayerZero vision, and these kind of three things. And we've got the messaging service, the LayerZero endpoint, and then the future-proof kind of architecture that you guys are touting as well. Can we kind of unpack these a little bit, perhaps starting with just the sort of messaging and then the endpoint, and then, future-proof architecture that you mentioned as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just to speak briefly to the vision, or at least my personal thesis on the space, I think it will be necessary over the next few years, should we even attempt to onboard the next 100,000 users, let alone, let's say, million or 100 million, for developers to be equipped with the tools to build chain agnostic experiences. And so under the hood, I believe there will be an enormous volume of cross-chain messaging in order to enable what feels chain agnostic in the front end to end users. But it's critical that we create experiences where end users don't have to know which chain they're interacting with. For us, as early players, builders, adopters in the space, it's exciting and interesting to contemplate the differences between different L1s, L2s, and understand the specialties of each of these. And also, as a builder, think through, how could I use something like LayerZero to leverage the best of Solana, or leverage the best of Polygon? But for my mother, for my grandfather, ultimately using an application is just about solving a problem and having a delightful experience while you're doing it. And so LayerZero infrastructure is really critical in this regard.
Mhm.
Those three concepts that you outlined are, I guess, three different angles for understanding how LayerZero operates.
Yeah.
So from the messaging standpoint, um, you can use LayerZero in our infrastructure for arbitrary contract invocation, and therefore any sort of smart contract logic that involves sending packets of information between different chains. And so some examples of this are you could use LayerZero to create a gameplay experience where a user accomplishes something in your game on, let's say, an Avalanche subnet. And
Mhm.
based off of that action, it triggers a message from that subnet to Ethereum, where that user's Twitter PFP lives. And that message can then mutate the metadata of the NFT on the other chain. And once Twitter recalls the mutated metadata, what has happened is within seconds, a user has killed a boss in your game, and now their Twitter PFP has a crown. So that's one very creative example of
Very cool. Yeah.
cross-chain messaging at play. But you could also use cross-chain messaging to enable something like an omni-chain fungible token. LayerZero has created this standard called the OFT, and it's a way for projects and applications to launch tokens or ERC20s that exist natively on multiple chains and can seamlessly transfer between them. Ultimately, if you look at these contracts, which are public, open source on our GitHub and ready for developers to use and live in many notable instances, you'll see that LayerZero's cross-chain messaging is the fundamental structure of the standard relies upon, and uses cross-chain messaging to manage the state of where the token is at any given moment, or the movement of the token.
Yeah. It's super interesting thinking about the kind of idea that it was what you said that I've been kind of talking about this for years as well. Like you say, for us, it's kind of exciting and interesting, but for our mothers and fathers, they just want things that work correctly. So all
Mhm.
this stuff, like you say, you achieve kill a boss in a game, you get a crown on Twitter. It all sounds super simple, like, or it should be fairly straightforward. And it's interesting that what we're talking about is like potentially like a million processes in the background just to achieve this very small thing, right? So it's like a very complicated world that's becoming more simplistic. And that kind of leads onto the question that I was going to ask you more generally about the kind of industry as well. And I personally believe that the kind of onboarding is the real issue right now in the crypto space and the blockchain space, that the applications are just not friendly enough, and they almost, it's like developers building things for developers, and we need them to start building for regular consumers, right? And cross-chain interoperability is absolutely vital for all of this success to take place, but it's not quite the sexiest topic in the world, but it's certainly
Mhm.
necessary. So how do you see that? Like, I obviously see LayerZero as a main player here, but do you also believe that if things become easier to use, more streamlined and more simplistic, then we can achieve this kind of mainstream adoption? Like, how do you feel about that? Or do you think there's more than that to go?
Absolutely. I think improving the user experience of all applications that are leveraging blockchain technology will be the defining factor in whether or not we see massive uptick in adoption. And really world-class DeFi protocols like Uniswap, for example, are
Yeah.
great examples of uh, simple user experience, a team that's dedicated to being very customer centric or empathetic of their end users. For so many of my friends who are new to the space, Uniswap is the very first protocol they interacted with, and certainly not the last. It becomes part of their day to day DeFi experience. And you're right. I think cross chain interop is absolutely essential here. One example that I think you and your team will resonate with, based off of Fuse's value prop and in the space that you're playing in, is trying to simplify the challenge of needing multiple gas tokens. So
Yeah.
native to LayerZero integration is this concept which we call gas abstraction, which enables developers to create experiences where users only ever need to pay in their native source gas token. So
Mhm.
even if a user is about to trigger a DeFi transaction that would touch 5 different chains and typically require the user to go to a centralized exchange like Coinbase and get 5 different gas tokens, Matic, AVAX,
Yeah.
Sol, etc., all into their wallet, maybe even have to traverse to different sites, different wallets. It's now just one click, one wallet, compressed, collapsed into one transaction. And that's handled by our relayer in our unique oracles and relayers architecture.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. And I think we often say that it's going to be great for people entering the space, but these things are great for us too, right, Irene? Like I'm not the
Hmm.
biggest I'm not the biggest fan of the clunkiness of blockchain, bridging tokens from one to the other, as you say, using different gas tokens, the inevitable I mean, there's been times where maybe you want to move something from one chain to another, and then you notice you don't have the gas fee. So say, for example, you put it on Matic, and then you want to get it out of Matic, but you don't have any Matic left because you've used it all.
Hmm.
Now you need to on-ramp just a tiny bit just to make a get. It's all very kind of crazy, isn't it? And it's not friendly whatsoever. Only to kind of intrepid explorers like us maybe who find it a bit sexy. But yeah, I just feel like
Totally.
it's a blocker, right?
Even
Like
for,
it's a blocker.
yes, absolutely. Even for, as you say, intrepid explorers like ourselves, churn and just like day-to-day busyness is ultimately what leads a user to, forego a particular user journey
Yeah.
on your web app or your protocol. And so
Mhm.
when you think about the best Web 2 experiences, typically those onboarding experiences are very, very quick. They get you to your solution as soon as possible and um, remove all of the clunkiness from the front end. And I think right now there are far too many projects and protocols that are hindered by existing or sort of like previously popular infrastructure that still forces users to have to go to multiple sites before they can actually go back to your protocol and achieve what they wanted to achieve.
I've always been really fascinated by that drop off that you just mentioned then, because I know for me personally, there's been many times in my life where I've gone to do a transaction or I've gone to complete something, but I've kind of shamefully ran away from it because I've not had the desired token in play, like the things I was just talking about. And it's always been something interesting to me,
Hmm.
that drop off. Like you think about these kind of gaming projects that are trying to onboard, they need to hit a critical mass of hundreds of thousands of users to make the ecosystem work properly. But I just keep wondering at what point people just think, oh, I can't do this. I can't. It's just too difficult for me. And,
Totally. Yeah.
and they just kind of run off. And I know I do it. And I've been working in this space for like, what, nearly like 7 years. And maybe I'm just a bit lazy, but it must happen the world over where people are just like, oh, no, I can't do this. And then you think about Web 2 apps, even sometimes they're super simple, but they still throw up a few loopholes that you really don't want to go through, and it stops you
Hmm.
from downloading the app. So yeah, I can see this
Totally.
as being like the holy grail of like mainstream adoption needs to be the point. It's like cash machines, right? We don't really care how they work. Well, most people don't. As long as the money comes out, we're good about it, right? Like
Hmm.
we don't, no one's asking any questions in the bank about how it works because they're not interested. So I think it's taken us quite a while to get there, and we're not there yet. And I think we've still got a long way to go to sort of on board. But as you say, our value prop is to drive mainstream crypto adoption through business payments. So something like LayerZero is massively valuable because we really rely on our builders kind of taking a off the shelf kind of view of it. And like you say, plugging in the best components that make the best applications, not being restricted to only use things that work on certain protocols and blah, blah, blah. So we can see the value 100%. I mean, just in terms of like we see mainstream adoption through business payments, we think that's a great channel. Do you see a similar kind of adoption channel there, or do you? How do you feel about adoption right now? We've seen gaming, we've seen NFTs, we've seen all sorts of things. What do you think will be the real tipping point to push us to where we want to go?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I love to think about. I have the privilege of meeting incredible founders every single day that are building across every vertical: DeFi, NFTs, gaming, TradFi, consumer fintech. And consumer fintech is actually a category that I'm really excited about. There
Yeah,
are notable household names that are beginning to integrate crypto payments or even as exotic as cross-chain swaps directly into their user apps. And so, like these applications that hundreds of millions of young people, for example, across South America, across Europe, eventually across the United States as well, use and to enable cross-chain swaps or, like I just described, one-click
yeah,
multi-chain transactions is huge, and
mm,
it's the right point of entry to educate hundreds of millions of new users. So business payments for sure, I think will play a role in this. And there are also a few notable Web2 enterprise companies that are moving into the space, and I think are bringing with them strong attention to detail and deep commitment to building great products
Yeah.
that the whole space will benefit from.
And definitely like solving real problems. And like I say, real problems in the sense that, like I mentioned cross-chain staking before, and I think that's a great problem solve that's happened there, where staking is something that people want to engage with, but staking on Ethereum can be quite costly, and sometimes can outweigh any benefit. You know, you're paying 30 euros to get in and out, and then by the time you finished, you're actually maybe down on your initial investment. It's kind of crazy. So the first time I saw it was with the Radar token doing cross-chain staking, and I thought, wow, this is really kind of cool. Like, you literally just you're staking on Ethereum and you're collecting on BNB. It just looked great. Like, I'm just not trying to blow your trumpet loads, but I just thought that this is a great solution to a problem, but not a problem
Absolutely.
like a techie problem, a consumer facing problem, like a real problem that people face, not just though, because often in our space we hear about problems and you're like, I don't even understand the problem that you're describing. It's so ridiculously technical. So as a normal person, it's like, you're not solving anything for me. But things like that, I see as being game changers, I guess, is how I kind of described it as well.
We're super excited about that as well. DappRadar's integration was super novel, and I think a great case study for a way that plenty of other projects could similarly integrate LayerZero.
Yeah, definitely. It just, like I say, it just made a lot of sense. And but then looking at some of the other projects that are tapping into the LayerZero protocol as well. And can I ask, like, what kind of benefits are they kind of leaning on? What is it that people are using LayerZero for the most? Are there any projects you want to kind of zoom in on that are doing particularly innovative things? Like who's kind of changing the game out there using LayerZero as far as you're concerned? Who excites you?
Right now, we're really excited about projects that are leveraging our OFT and ONFT standards. I'd alluded to this earlier, but these two standards are simply ways of using LayerZero, the protocol, to enable seamless transfer of digital assets between chains without wrapping or without security risk or fragmentation of liquidity. And so we could talk about ONFT right now because that's really
please,
top of mind. And for newcomers to the space, I think NFTs are often a really friendly point of entry, but they could be even friendlier, which is where ONFT comes in. And Pudgy Penguins is a project that a couple weeks ago announced their migration from being a single chain Ethereum-based collection to being omni-chain, or to allow their users to bridge their Ethereum-based Pudgy Penguins to Polygon, BNB, or Arbitrum. And so at the discretion of their users, they can now use this beautiful UI that's on their website and move their NFTs between all of these different chains. And so once their NFTs go across this bridge, they become ONFTs. And just like with any integration with LayerZero, ONFTs only require paying the source native gas, and are never wrapped and therefore maintain provenance. And so for high value NFTs, this is the way to enable movement between chains. And ONFT is being adopted by gaming studios, by new projects launching in subnets and supernets that want their assets in in-game currency to have meaning and be interoperable with other chains, to the point of future proofing. You'd mentioned our future proofing our design and architecture earlier. When you adopt OFT or ONFT for your tokens or NFTs, yes, you might just launch it as a Fuse-based NFT or token or an Ethereum-based token, but you buy yourself the optionality to move your assets anywhere in the future or empower your community to do so. And so just to tee up this huge unlock, imagine how challenging it must have been for NFT creators after the Terra Luna collapse. They had these incredible communities that they had built, but were entirely siloed and had nowhere to port their community in a seamless way that protected the value of their assets afterwards. And we continue to see this with some other applications who spin up their own side chains and mint single chain NFTs there, typically utility-based NFTs. And then, if and when they decide to wind down operations of their side chain, all of those NFTs are stuck forever, have lost
Yeah.
meaning. And so this is why we're really excited about ONFT and OFT as well.
So can I just, sorry, I'm going to ask you maybe a bit of a silly question. I'm just
Please.
thinking about like when you're minting NFTs. So just thinking back to the hype of when NFTs really became kind of, everybody was talking about it and they were making mainstream attention as well. It was very much Ethereum NFT collections that kind of gained that hype, the ERC 721s. If you're minting an OFT, is this a brand new token standard, or are you literally, just can you explain that a little bit more for me? Sorry, I just haven't quite got that. Like
No,
if
that's
you're
a great question.
mint on Ethereum, or how does that work? Like what's the process there? Because the only reason I ask is because some Ethereum collections, they kind of garner that OG status, right? And I'm thinking if you make it in another token standard, do they lose that OG status? Maybe it's a silly question.
This is
But yeah,
No,
go
not
for
a silly question at all. It's a hugely important one, and I completely agree that as an NFT creator or community manager, there are such important decisions
it.
and strategic alignment that you have to keep in mind. With ONFT, you can have the birth chain or the initial mint chain be whichever one you'd like, and so you could have your entire collection be minted on Ethereum, but with the inherent capability to move elsewhere, either now or in the future. And those chains that are enabled within your own FT are again at your own discretion. It could be all 25 plus EVMs and non EVMs that LayerZero supports, or it could just be Ethereum and Polygon and Solana, or it could just be Ethereum. And in the future, you can unlock and expand to other chains. To your point around different standards, the OFT and ONFT standards really just use LayerZero, the protocol, in order to manage and call to the different parallel standards on other chains. And so when your NFT is on Ethereum, it acts and behaves and truly is, for all intents and purposes, just a standard ERC 721. So they're entirely compatible with existing NFTs on other chains. And if
Got
you
it.
have an existing NFT collection and would like for it to go omni-chain the same way that Pudgy Penguins did, this is where our proxy ONFT contract would come in. And so this is a way to imbue omni-chain capabilities into existing collections. And the OFT standard is simply the fungible token version of ONFT.
Got it. Okay, so you don't have to retrospectively go back and relaunch. That's really cool. That if you've kind of, yeah, because you don't want to be going back and relaunching a collection, you just need to kind of plug it in retrospectively. I can see that being the kind of way to do NFT. I can see certain industries there probably with more desire for that, especially gaming, right? Where we see a lot of DApp games kind of building their own side chains and moving off the chain they start on to kind of explore different options. So I can see these options. That does sound so that's the kind of focus for you guys, right? That's something that you guys are going big on. Are you finding traction with that? Are you finding that the project builders are getting excited about this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so much traction, particularly since the Pudgy Penguins launch.
Yeah.
But we're so, in admiration and awe of the very earliest developers. We had just written the ONFT standard and had it in our GitHub repo and our Git book, probably almost a little hidden away. And then some of the earliest developers, just without ever reaching out to us, spun out Ghostly Ghosts, which became number one on OpenSea way back when they first launched. Kenpai Pandas, which is an original ONFT collection, and Tiny Dinos as well. And so those were the OG developers, and they have really paved the way for the entire space and showing what's possible. Ghostly Ghost, for example, created their NFT experience so that depending on your birth chain, I think it's the outline of the ghost is a particular color, and then depending on whichever chain the NFT currently exists on, the background of the NFT is a particular color.
That's pretty cool. So it's actually dynamically placed as well to match with that. That's really, and I can see that like launching NFT collections on a single chain is kind of limiting, isn't it? Outside of Ethereum to a certain degree. When you look at these kind of PFP avatars, they were all big on Ethereum, and there were collections that got noticed on other chains, but they were kind of few and far between. So I can see this as being like an NFT collection on Fuse. They want to launch and build on Fuse, but they want to expand out from Fuse. This is great. This is actually like a direct benefit here as well. Okay, cool. Another question I have, Irene, is about the kind of So Web3 developers out there, we know that Web3 development is a hot topic, and we know that people are jumping off the Web2 ship into the Web3 ship. But we also know that there isn't a huge amount of sort of, it's not there's not millions and millions of Web3 developers out there right now. It's still quite a small vocation, and people are still learning. So what's LayerZero like is it just geared up for kind of really super educated Web3 devs, or can your average people kind of jump in and start to experiment here? Or how friendly are you with people like me who are perhaps not so technically advanced, but would like to start experimenting with things? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, I love this question. And we have been spending the last year engaging much more deeply with university groups, for example, and offering technical workshops to teach students how to mint an ONFT or how to mint an OFT for their project. On our website and Gitbook, we have quick start examples, and that's where I direct all beginner devs to start. And you can use that Jumpstart Solidity code to begin experimenting with sending messages between chains. And we also have guides on our Gitbook, and we'll be actually really fleshing this out much more over the next few weeks, but guides for how to step-by-step mint your own omni-chain NFT collection. So those are the two places that I would encourage beginner devs to begin. But in 2023, end of Q1 and beginning of Q2 in particular, we will be revamping our docs and adding many more resources for newcomers to the space. And I think resources that are not just docs as well. And so short form video content, more demos on our YouTube, and conversations like this one.
Yeah, that's very good. It's very important as well. It's something that Fuse is focusing on, these kind of step-by-step guides, hand holding. It's all very well as saying that things are quite straightforward to use, but we need to provide that content, right? And it will be, as we say, I work in content, so it's kind of evergreen content that will sit around for a long time and be super useful. And like you say as well, video content, step-by-step stuff, it's absolutely pivotal to being able to make these changes. So okay, cool. That's interesting to know. All right, so we're kind of coming towards the end, Irene. I mean, number one, I just want to thank you. I think you're doing an amazing job of outlining everything about LayerZero and sort of speaking about the direct benefits as well. I saw that, can you speak about the kind of activity that's happening for LayerZero right now? What's it looking like for 2023? We're still early. Give us a bit of alpha if you can, Irene. No pressure. But what's going on? Hit me then. What you got for the people listening? What's happening for LayerZero throughout the rest of the year?
We are so fortunate to be overwhelmed every day with a bunch of inbound. So many talented developers and creative newcomers, and also OG builders in the space reaching out with different ideas. And so the organic growth has been pretty astonishing. On testnet, we have nearly 20,000 smart contracts deployed, and mainnet 2,000. And of those 2,000 smart contracts, more than 600 unique applications. So we are so excited to continue that growth and supporting any and all developers that are looking to integrate LayerZero. We are absolutely going to be focusing a lot on supporting NFT communities, like I'd mentioned, gaming projects, and then also, our bread and butter does continue to be DeFi, and that extends into consumer fintech and TradFi, as I'd alluded to earlier. So just growth across the board, and you'll find us and the LayerZero Labs team at a bunch of different conferences and meetups around the world. We want to meet you. We want to hear what you're building. I personally will be at Denver, and shortly after we'll be in Barcelona for the Avalanche Summit, GDC, the Game Developers Conference. So for any who are listening and are intrigued, want to learn more, actively building, and are looking for support from our team, or just want to jam on ideas, like how can I improve the user experience by integrating LayerZero on the back end, reach out. We want to talk to you, we want to meet you, and want to be supportive.
Very cool. So there's no kind of prerequisite. You're quite happy to speak to everyone and anyone. Is there like a minimum requirement? Do people need to reach out to you with a white paper, or just with a broad idea, or how can people approach you in the best way, I guess is what I'm asking, so that they tick all the boxes that you guys need to see from the beginning. if that's a question.
I think it's important to call out that the majority of projects that have built with LayerZero did so without ever getting in touch with us. The protocol itself is open and permissionless. All of our documentation and code is open source. We also only ever push immutable code, which is a very difficult pledge and commitment from an engineering standpoint, but one that we do to ensure the security and longevity of all applications building with LayerZero. And so you don't necessarily have to reach out to us, but should you want very tailored integration support, which we offer to all projects who do reach out, no requisites at all. In fact, some of my favorite conversations have been with college dropouts who just have some vague idea of what they want to build. And we hop on and talk for 30 minutes and sort of just jam on what works, what doesn't, what we're seeing personally.
Yeah.
I see hundreds of projects each day and know what strong architecture looks like, and also can direct and support from a go-to-market side or providing some fundraising strategy support, all of that. So it's never too early, and it's also certainly never too late.
Okay, so it's not just about the kind of technical support, there's the marketing support, guidance, because obviously, yeah, you guys are seeing a lot of projects take to market and go with these ideas. So very interesting. That's a big gap in our space. I think it's still the kind of marketing in this space is still quite new and fresh. People are still finding out the best ways to do things as well. In terms of that, Irene, where's the best place people can kind of reach out to you if they just want to have a conversation? Is it Discord? Is it Twitter? Is it Telegram? Where are you guys most active for those kind of chats?
Our Discord is super lively, and I think if you are a new builder to the space, you should go there, observe, ask some questions. You'll find that other builders using LayerZero are super generous with their time and have a lot of expertise to share. You can also get in touch with our community moderators through Discord. On our website and in our Git book, we also have an easy sort of link to share your contact with us, and then we can get in touch that way. I certainly respond really quickly through Telegram. And so for anyone listening now that wants to get in touch quickly, I can share my Telegram afterwards, and I'm happy to converse that way.
Awesome. I can put it into the video description, actually, Irene, if that's all right with you. I can drop it in there.
Yeah, and absolutely.
Yeah, people can reach out to you and have a conversation. All right, very cool. I'm going to wrap up for today. Number one, Irene, I want to really thank you for taking time out to come and spend time with me today and talk about LayerZero. At Fuse, we're super excited about the integration and the fact that people can now leverage the tools. So we do, we're really kind of pushing people to go and explore. And as you say, it's open source. Builders in the Fuse ecosystem can just jump in and start experimenting straight away. So we are super excited about the collaboration, and it's really cool. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. I think you've done a great job explaining everything. If anybody has any questions or any further, or would like any further information, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to Irene. I'll put the Telegram thing there for you guys. But yeah, that's it for today. So thank you everybody for tuning in and listening. I said I wouldn't hype up the subscribe again, but I'm going to do it one more time. Please do like and subscribe our YouTube page. It helps us grow and helps us get attention onto these vital topics that we need people to learn about. So thank you once again, Irene. Anything you want to wrap up with for today?
No, this has been fantastic, Ian, and we're so thrilled to be a close partner of Fuse's, and I'm excited to get to know your community better.
Yeah, thank you so much. And likewise as well, we're excited about the partnership. So thank you everybody for tuning in. We shall see y'all in a week or two. We've got a couple of Fuse Meet shows lined up for next week. So keep your eyes on Twitter for those. And in the meantime,